Welcome again. My name is Dr. Louise Strickland, and I'll be presenting on the third part of the Becoming Tech series, which focuses on your confidence and ways to boost and build your confidence to make you just a more confident tech professional as you work through your boot camp and enter into the tech world. So, as I stated, confidence is defined as the belief in oneself, abilities, and judgments. It's the assurance that comes from a strong sense of competence, effectiveness, and self-worth. So, unpacking the first part of confidence being competent, which is the idea that doing something well makes you want to do it more because you trust your ability. So it's kind of like a cycle. If I do it well, I want to do it more. I trust myself. And these abilities can be natural or taught. And one way to boost your confidence is to use your natural abilities and natural strength to carry over into other areas. So really building on what you're good at and what makes you feel confident already and using that confidence to propel you into other areas. So for example, my husband, Justin, he's a natural leader. Like he loves leadership. He will stop and talk to a random person in the grocery store about leading and how to be a better leader and just full of passion. So he used that natural ability to propel him into his current career and create a leadership academy where he's helping other people work on their leadership skills. So one part of boosting your confidence is identifying things that you're already good at and building up that confidence in those things. The second part is effectiveness, which is the idea of situational success or working towards something that ends up being considered a success. So that could be, for me, my situational success is creating a morning routine because I am not a morning person. Like mornings are always hard for me, but now I have a morning routine. I get up, I go for a little walk, listen to music or like do a devotional and spend time, just checking things off my morning list so that I can feel effective. So essentially, effectiveness is answering the question, did I do what I intended to do? Like I was hoping to do insert thing. Did I do it? Yes or no? So was I or was this thing a success? So one confidence extinguisher or something that lowers your confidence is when we have something that isn't effective or doesn't pan out the way we expect and we internalize it and say like, I failed or I'm not a success or I'm not good enough, which of course is a blow to our confidence. And then the last component of confidence is self-worth. And it is one's personal value outside of work or school. So self-worth is your internal value that informs whether you feel good enough. So obviously, these three things are closely related. But when I was doing my research and preparing, I realized that sometimes we can be really strong in one part of confidence and struggle a little bit in the other. So for me, excuse me, for me, I am usually pretty strong in self-worth. Like Louise, you have a high value outside of what you learn in school and what you can do for work. But sometimes I struggle with feeling effective. So I may feel like, oh, Louise, like you're not doing enough. Like your work isn't being counted as a success because I want to do more. Like I just feel like I always want to do more. So sometimes we are really good in one thing and we struggle in another. But one key point to remember is that confidence is not innate. It is something that can be developed and strengthened over time. And the amount of confidence you have right now, it's not your end point. It's just your starting point and your like foundation. So from here's where you'll grow. So a little chit chat time. In the chat, if you would share one confidence related struggle or challenge that you've experienced in the bootcamp so far. And if a peer has one that you kind of conquered, feel free to respond to them as well. And I'll share some that students have shared with me before too. So just share maybe some things that you've thought through that were confidence related or people may have struggled with too. And I'll talk while everyone else is typing. So one thing that students in our advising sessions will kind of struggle with their confidence about is if they don't feel smart enough and they're like, I'm a teacher and I'm learning to code. Like my background is not related at all. So a lot of times there's some tension there between what you did previously and what you are learning to do currently. Yes, the fear of like not doing enough. Like, am I succeeding? Am I doing enough? Should I be doing more with where I am right now? And I think, well, oh, Kevin said, second guessing my code. Yes, because it's a new language and I'm unsure if it's going to run properly. Kevin, you are definitely not alone. I've had that conversation of just that uncertainty a lot of times. Oh, Trinity, imposter syndrome. That's the good one. And we'll kind of unpack it later, but shameless plug, there is another advising event on imposter syndrome. So definitely stay tuned for when that one is. And then lastly, Christopher, relying too much on external resources. Yes, it is a lot to remember. And sometimes you can feel less confident when you feel like you have to go search out the answer or you have to read something to jog your memory. So all of those are very, very valid things that you're not alone in feeling though, your confidence struggling with those things. And we'll unpack them in a few minutes. So some challenges to confidence. Now that we've gotten the jitters out and kind of shared some of our personal areas that we've struggled with, I did want to review some of the most common things that challenge students' confidence during their boot camp, that they share with their advisor that we've picked up on meeting with students. So first up is the intense learning pace. I would ask you to raise your hand in the chat to say, are you surprised by the pace of your learning? Or did week one kind of catch you off guard with how fast the boot camp goes? But I just have like this strong internal feeling that everyone would be like, yes, the pace was crazy. The pace was really quickly. So as you know, tech boot camps often have just a pretty quick pace with a curriculum because it is condensed and it can feel like information overload. And all of these things can cause some students to lose confidence because they may struggle to keep up with the material or they may not trust that they can learn at the pace of the quick learning pace. However, of course, we have resources available to help. So some of the things that I would recommend for that particular confidence challenge is using your support system. So meeting with your advisor and letting them know like, hey, I'm struggling with my confidence. I don't know if I can keep up. This is going pretty quickly. Just letting them know how you're feeling and just what you're thinking through as you're working through your boot camp. And then of course, your instructor, your tech coaches, and your peers are also available to help boost your confidence if you're struggling with the pace of the curriculum, because the tech coaches are alumni. They've been through it. Your peers are going through it with you, and the instructors are almost the reason the curriculum is so fast. So you can really lean on your support system to build your confidence when you're feeling uncertain about the pace of the learning. Secondly, as some Trinity, I think, mentioned, is imposter syndrome. Many students feel inadequate or like fear of being exposed as frauds during their boot camp. So imposter syndrome is a really, really big deal. I have these conversations with students at least once per week. Like guaranteed each week, I'm going to remind the student that they are capable, adequate, and they deserve to be here. So some students feel like they should learn more about a particular concept before viewing themselves as prepared or good enough. And like I stated, the advising team, we do have a webinar on imposter syndrome just because how prevalent it is in the tech industry and in most high achieving adults, honestly. We want to kind of get in front of it and its impact on our students and their confidence and their ability to succeed. So with this one, of course, I'm going to say it's in the webinar. I believe Serena, which is another advisor, is presenting on imposter syndrome next month. So please attend, and she'll have a lot of gems prepared for you. So if you're struggling with that, attend the webinar and then also talk to your advisor. We are not strangers to the idea of feeling that imposter syndrome. I mean, we definitely have some tools and tips to help you navigate that feeling and still find success in your boot camp. And one of my secret tips is, I know a lot of people say, keep a gratitude journal, remember the things you're grateful for, but I kind of like flip it and make a success playlist is what I call it, where I like go down memory lane to think of all the things that I've succeeded in when I'm feeling like an imposter or when I'm kind of struggling with my confidence in a certain area. And then lastly is the fear of failure. A lot of students struggle with their confidence because they are scared that they just won't succeed, which is not abnormal, especially if you are coming from a different profession, or career, or if you studied something completely unrelated in college or in high school or previously. It is not uncommon for students to feel like, what did I sign myself up for? What did I get myself into? So if you are having those feelings and just kind of feeling that self-doubt, which kind of is a blow to your confidence, I will remind you to trust yourself. You made a decision to come here, or you're making a decision to come here, which is a big deal. And I just encourage you to trust yourself and lean into your ability to make good decisions and to do well and to succeed, which is the final tip for that one, is like, give yourself permission to succeed. A lot of students, are not a lot, but several students will go into the boot camp thinking like, oh man, like what if I fail phase one, or what if I fail at being a software engineer, like just kind of feeling low confidence and uncertainty. So I like switch it, like, what if you do well? Like, what if you pass your phases? What if you become a graduate and alumni like our panelists? Like, give yourself permission to succeed and do well. Okay, now we'll kind of change positions and just chit chat over some of the strategies for boosting your confidence and some tangible tools that you can take away from here into your daily lives. And feel free to keep chatting in the comments and engaging with your peers and Michelle. So I'll briefly discuss these strategies, and if you have any questions about them, put them in the chat and we'll get to them, or you can save them for the Q&A that'll happen in just a few slides. So, number one strategy, when you are struggling with your confidence, I always say, what is your goal for the week? So setting a realistic goal definitely can combat that confidence struggle, because it gives you something to look forward to and something to achieve. So when you're setting your goals, try to do SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So setting something that you can do and that will make you feel good about doing. And then secondly, celebrating progress. So too often we don't celebrate until we've reached the big goal. So the graduation, the completing the program is when some students want to celebrate. But if you have Louise as your advisor, we celebrate along the way, and most other advisors as well. We celebrate your milestones, when you complete your phases, when you show us your project, or when you have your first code challenge. We really want to celebrate along the way so that we can build your confidence, of course, and then also get in the practice of reminding you of how effective you are and how the good that you're doing. So when I meet with my students, we celebrate each and every milestone. So I'll say, okay, now, what did you accomplish this month or this week? What have you been working on? And as you're telling me, I'm like, yes, like you're making a step in the right direction, because it's a big deal. Of course, because small milestones lead to completed phases. You may be thinking, I only went to one class, I have all this ahead of me, but you're on your way. You put one foot in front of the other and you're heading in the right direction. So the third thing is, of course, positive self-talk. And I cannot tell you enough how important it is to be careful of the way that you talk to yourself as you are encouraging yourself or dealing with the problem. I've met with countless students who I will never name, who are so hard on themselves and have negative self-talk. And they're like, Louise, I can't learn this. I struggle with science. I struggle with math. Like it's not making sense in my mind. And of course, it may be difficult, but I encourage you to challenge yourself to replace negative thoughts with positive affirmations that boost your confidence and speak to your proven abilities, gifts, and skills. The cognitive triangle says that there's a connection between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So if our thoughts are positive, then our feelings and behaviors will match. But the same is true for the reverse. If we have negative feelings, then we will create negative thoughts and behavior. So how we talk to ourselves and the thoughts we think really can impact our behavior and our mood, of course. So this is not to say that you will always feel positive. I promote toxic positivity. I know that every day is not a good day, but I do want to encourage you and remind you to acknowledge and validate those feelings, but don't let negative or bad moments keep you in a negative cycle. Acknowledge it and move on. If you don't do well on your code challenge or on like a particular concept, acknowledge it, study some more, get ready, and move on. But don't let those low moments keep you there, because you got a lot to learn. You have a lot of boot camp left. So don't let it keep you stuck in one moment. And then fourth point, embrace failures. As stated before, boot camps are not easy, and they are not always paradise. Failure is a natural part of the process and necessary for growth. We don't do well in everything we pursue. As a recovering perfectionist, I wish that I did perfectly well at everything, but there are several things that I failed at the first time and had to work to get better. Push-ups, for example. Still terrible at it, but I will do them until I can conquer them. And that's just the mindset that you have to take on when you're approaching a boot camp or something challenging, is that it may not go perfect every time, but it's going to go well enough for you to learn, graduate, and become a tech professional. John Maxwell, he champions the ideology of fail often, fail fast, fail forward, which is really just a cry for people to get over their fear of failing and use it as an opportunity to grow and to learn. I'm often reminded of the idea that it is better to fail than to have never tried something at all. So really kind of just throwing yourself out there and doing your best and making the best of every situation. So a quote from Paul, which is an alumni of the software engineering program, and he states that the feeling of realizing you can do whatever you want when you put your mind into it is just beautiful and inspiring. Whenever I was feeling down or unmotivated, I realized the only person who can change that is myself. I remember feeling tired after work one day, but remembering what you, his student advisor, had told me. I decided to try it and told myself, I can do it. And to no one's surprise, I was able to push through and complete a few laps that day. So sometimes with confidence, your advisor can encourage you, your instructor can encourage you, your peers can try to keep you boosted and on the right path, but you also have to do some work too. You have to commit to trying at least the things that you're given and doing the work. It is confidence, and building confidence is a very personal journey, and we are here to help you and support you, but ultimately it is yours to work on. It is yours to improve. It is yours to acknowledge. So more strategies. When discussing tangible strategies that can help when you're struggling with confidence, it's important to acknowledge that different strategies work at different times. So what may work for phase 1 and 2 may not work for phase 4 and 5. You have to really figure out what will work best given your specific circumstance. So the first, another strategy, is building community, which I wholeheartedly champion. And I believe that the community you have around you can really make or break your success and your confidence in the boot camp. We offer so many opportunities to feel supported and for students to build that community here at Flatiron, and students should take advantage of it. So some of those opportunities are, of course, your advisor. Oh, wait, Paul said push-ups. I'm working on it. I am working on these push-ups, okay? But some of the support we offer are, of course, your student advisor. We are your first line of defense, your first line of community. I'm always available to meet with you, email, text, chat on Discord, whatever is helpful for you. And we are really here to just make sure you succeed. So there's no bad time, bad question. I didn't know if I should reach out to you. Yes, please do. You should always reach out. If you're thinking that, shoot us an email, get on our Calendly, schedule a meeting. So we are your just first line of community is what I call it. And then also you have your instructor, your cohort, and then just your colleagues and peers in the program, which you can always find on Discord. They are your built-in community, and you should naturally have experiences with them that build your confidence. So I always tell my students, like, do you have access to Discord? Have you posted on Discord? So definitely using that to build your confidence and provide yourself opportunities to talk about tech and see what's going on in the world and just really make those connections. And outside of those, we offer even more support. So you have your pair with a technical coach, your student assistance program, your advising and career services drop-in hours, your community events. We really try to beef up our support for students because we know that you are doing a tough thing. We know that the boot camp is hard, that studying is hard, and wanting to possibly change career paths and enter a new field. All of that is really difficult for any one person to manage. So we really want to make sure we are providing adequate support so that our students feel that support and are entering their new thing confidently. So with anything, of course, you have to put yourself out there and schedule meetings with your advisors and instructors and show up to events to network with your colleagues. But also remember that community is a two-way street. Sometimes you show up when you need others, but remember, please, please, that the other side of community is showing up when others need you. So engaging when you can answer a question is just as important as getting on Discord when you have a question. And then secondly, owning your narrative. Practice your elevator pitch, which is also something you do with your career coach. Talk to others about your boot camp and what you're learning. The more you practice talking about something, the more comfortable and confident you get about that thing. So just including your boot camp in your everyday lives and making sure that you're talking about it as much as possible to your peers and colleagues and people that you encounter. You'll realize that you prefer to use certain words when you're talking about certain things. I don't have a background in tech, but you may have, like when someone says like to my software engineering, what language are you learning? Or like, what's your favorite language? You may love Python and not prefer JavaScript. You'll realize that you have the ability to answer those questions, which can boost your confidence because it's your story. You should tell it with confidence and you should be proud of what you're doing. The third point, practice, practice, practice your skills. Practice is important to building your confidence because the more you do something, the better you get, but also you just feel good about it. You feel more confident. You feel like the expert the more you practice something. So it's also important for me to emphasize that one component of confidence that many students struggle with is knowing who, where, and how to ask questions. So a part of your practice is asking the question. So maybe you don't know if your instructor will understand your question, or you don't know who the correct person to ask, but you have the confidence to ask your question, which is a big deal because I know that some students will not ask their question and they will try to like struggle through a certain concept. So be confident to ask what you don't know. And a silent promo, you can use Ask Ada. If you have a question and you don't know quite the words to use, you can just play with Ask Ada and you'll may stumble through it, but it's AI, it's a tech bot, it's not a person. So until you have that confidence to engage with your instructor and ask certain questions, you can practice with Ask Ada to see, the language that you should be using, the way that you should be asking those questions. And then, of course, shameless plug for the technical coach. If you are unsure, definitely get with a tech coach. They are part of practicing your skills. I love the tech coaches because they're alumni of the program, and I think they are awesome and they're very helpful. So give them an opportunity to help you practice and build that confidence and hone those skills. And then the fourth part, lastly, but definitely not least, is reflecting on your journey. Sometimes we build our confidence by seeing where we started at and where we are now. Just considering how far we've gone and how much we've learned. You will learn a lot during your boot camp. From day one, you really enter the classroom with paper, pen, note, like ready to learn and just learn a lot. And we know that you will learn a lot. So I always try to talk to students when I see that they're struggling with confidence, like, you may be struggling now, but look how much more you've learned since your day one. Like look at the progress you've made, the things that you can do. and just kind of reflect on your accomplishments, your sense of success. So deciding to do something new and challenging requires a level of confidence and self-trust that you'll need to learn and to lean on as you're progressing in your boot camp. So you'll continuously want to practice that confidence and trust so that you like perfect that skill and use it when you're struggling or when you're engaging a particularly difficult thing. And with reflecting on your journey, make sure you spend time, think about where your gaps in understanding are so that you can go back and fill them in. So just being honest, so maybe you're very strong in this point, but a little bit weaker in another, so that you can know what to do to increase those weaker areas. So another student quote from a software engineering student, Lima, who's an alumni, says that building a community both in and post bootcamp is definitely a confidence booster. Networking via meetups, pair programming with other developers, and discussing what we're learning / projects we're working on shines light on so much. I was able to double down on my tech stack and gain some resources while learning about new technologies and how / when to use them. I think personally, one thing that sets our school apart from other schools and just learning environments in general is like the ability to build community. The tech world, sometimes it may feel isolating when you're like, I have to get this down, like I have to learn this skill. But at Flatiron, we really encourage students to use all the benefits that we have, build as much community as possible so that you can lean on it and so that people can lean on you when necessary, but also because it's fun. You won't meet, everyone you meet won't be able to talk tech with you or talk code. Louise, for example, won't be able to talk tech with you or talk code. I can listen and yeah, show me your project. Of course I want to see, but I cannot help you put a button on your, like I can't help you code certain things. So it is really important to kind of build that community so that you have like your people, you have your group, you have your circle that can keep you accountable and help you continue to move forward. Which brings me to I think the most fun part of the webinar, because I love listening to students talk about their experiences, but now we're going to leave the last little chunk of time, the last 15 or so minutes for the Q&A with our two alumni, both of which I had the pleasure of advising with us. So I'm really excited that they were able to squeeze me into their schedule and give me some of their busy Tuesday evenings. So we'll do snaps and claps for them for coming and chit-chatting with me on today. So I will start by asking you both to introduce yourself and just share a little bit about your background, the program you completed, and your experience.
Yeah, I can go first. Hi, everyone. My name is Kira Hammerling Potts, and I recently graduated from Flatiron's software engineering program. I did the Flex program, which is self-paced. So I'm coming from a background in clinical psychology primarily, and I also took some coding courses in college. And that kind of gave me a good starting foundation to pursue coding. And my psychology work gave me some interpersonal skills and collaboration skills that really help when working with others, whether it's pair programming or hopefully working on group projects in the future, working in teams. And, I kind of thought that I was going to pursue psychology permanently and get a clinical psychology PhD and maybe have my own practice. And what I realized was that even though I love the work I was doing some suicide prevention research, thought it was really meaningful, but I also realized I was missing that kind of analytical aspect of it. I really enjoyed math and science courses in high school and college, and I liked the few coding courses that I took. And I realized that, while utilizing those soft skills, I want much of the meat and bones of my work to be analytical. So I made the switch into software engineering. And, after looking at a bunch of different boot camps, I ultimately chose Flatiron for a few reasons. One is that the Flex program was very appealing. I moved to DC from New York and was considering the New York in person, but realized that I needed a little bit more flexibility for other commitments and wanted to spend a lot of time on my projects and just kind of make my own schedule. But really the communication with Flatiron from the beginning was great, and it gave me confidence into, Flatiron's style of working with students and updating the curriculum and really just maintaining that connection. So it made me feel really good going into the program.
Thank you. We'll touch on the career change a little bit later and like how that worked with your confidence and yeah, just how you navigate going from clinical psych to coding, which are from two different worlds kind of, but there's a relation there. Tim, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Tim Ryan, and Louise, thank you for having me here, and I appreciate all of your help as the advisor during my time. So, I am in New York. I live in Brooklyn with my wife and two very active little boys who opened the door at one point, but didn't actually run in. So they might actually run in, and you might see them, but hopefully not. I thought the door was locked, but obviously it wasn't. Um, So I work in photography right now, and I have for a little while. And with everything in photography changing a little bit, especially with AI and everything, and I decided that it was, and I've been working with computers. I thought that it was a good idea, and they made sense to me. So it kind of made sense to me to do a career pivot and try something else. So that's what led me to Flatiron. I had a friend of a friend that had gone to Flatiron here and then found out same thing about the flex program. And because of having, a family, I work freelance, so it's the best possible situation because I can either take jobs or I can say no to them. And if I, which I increasingly had to do when I was starting to, excuse me, get short on time. But I ended up making it through and with a lot of support. And, it is really nice actually to hear some of these ways that you can help yourself think positively and everything because it really does help. And I'm going to come back to this because this is when it begins, is to continue the education and to search for a job.
It is true. It is definitely requires confidence to, as both of you know, pivot in your career and what you've been doing and what you've studied and kind of mastered into the unknown. So, um, if you both will kind of share your experience with changing directions, like how did you maintain confidence during that, and what was that experience like for you?
I would say that confidence starting off was pretty difficult. I mean, in clinical psych, there were some analytical pieces like analyzing data a little bit, but I hadn't coded in a long time. I hadn't coded in a few years. And what I had done before that was pretty surface level, like barely touched React, didn't do any back end. So it was basically like phase one is the kind of stuff I had seen. And I definitely didn't feel confident in my ability to do full stack programming and compete with people that have already been software engineers and have all this experience. And I think ultimately what pushed me to do it was, one, I knew it would make me happiest if I do succeed, kind of talking about that positive self-talk rather than negative. Like, what if I do succeed? If this does work out, I know I'm going to be a lot happier on this path. And I've seen other people do this path, transitioning from all sorts of things. Like photography is a really interesting transition. And my cousin did something similar, transition from art history. Like people from all sorts of backgrounds have been able to do this. And, again, talking to the admissions team also really helped because they, really encouraged me. They reinforced their mission and why I was here and said, you can do it. Like based on our short conversations, we think you can do it. And that was enough to get started. In terms of confidence throughout the program, I might talk about that a little more later, but I needed that initial push and I was able to get it.
Yes, that is good. Michael said in the chat, rather than change career completely, did either of the alumni hope to apply new software engineering skills to their respective careers beforehand?
I feel like,
Well, oh yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Okay, all right, I'll go. So I was pretty sure that I, didn't want to go down a PhD path and have my own clinical practice anymore. But it has occurred to me that, I could use coding skills and
Mm,
use them in a more, data focused way, or even to build products that are related to what I was doing before. Like I could work with, mental health or healthcare related companies and have a little bit of extra knowledge. Um, so no, I definitely knew I was going to switch careers, but I do kind of have the long-term goal of still working on the things I was really passionate about, just in
mm.
a slightly different area. So maybe building things and helping with the support rather than, actually running clinical studies and that kind of thing.
Perfect. Tim, you want to add anything?
Probably something, similar, but obviously in my line of work, there are some things that'll be somewhat mainly actually I found a much easier way to make shoot folders in Terminal. So I can do that a lot faster now than doing it one by one and duplicating and renaming.
Yeah.
Um, and the hope is, I'll build myself. I've done some of my projects were similar to a project that I would make to show my portfolio online. So the idea is that I'll write my own website again, so then I can stop paying somebody else to do it. So other than that, but the point is to make the career transition. Also, just because I feel like it goes back for me, a lot of it goes back to having a family and wanting, a normal job, whatever that might be. But with benefits, et cetera, where a lot of those are good for having a family because things are just more consistent in general. So that's really part of the idea as well.
Perfect. Yes, what I found is that quite a few of my students on that I advise are kind of pivoting in their career, which means either doing something new altogether or hoping to add a new skill or kind of keep up with the dynamic nature of the tech industry. Like was mentioned with the curriculum updates and just wanting to make sure they're in the know of the most recent expectations for tech professionals. Before I move on to my next question, Jeff asked which flex program did you guys do? And I'll kind of speak to the different lengths of the program, but also were you able to retain the information provided, even though you might be watching videos or reading information by yourself? So how was that retention with in the flex program being so self-paced?
I can
Well,
start.
oh yeah, no, you should
Go
go
ahead.
for it. We
No,
haven't talked before.
all right. I will go. Um, I mean, it's from what I understand, Louise, maybe you can correct me because it might have changed since I started, but there's my understanding was there's only one length for the flex program. Um, but because it's flexible and somewhat self-paced, some of us, especially those of us who choose or end up not following the 40-week pace that's recommended, which is definitely a good idea, but definitely is more intense, especially if one is working at the same time. Um, I'll talk about a little bit more about it possibly later, but pretty much I think I found out there's a reason why, there's the saying code every day, because at the beginning in phase one in JavaScript, I wasn't able to because I was primary parent and then just between work and life, it wasn't happening. And so found I was spending a lot of time kind of backtracking, finding out where I was, relearning the last little bit. It's like, rereading the last half of a chapter of a book to remember where you are because it was a lot of time in between. But then later, once I had more time to dedicate to it and was doing it every day, I didn't have that problem as much. And then at the end, when you kind of do have to go back to in phase five, you have to use some skills from phase two, you're a little rusty, but at the same time, the good thing is because depending on how long it was only a few months, it comes back pretty quickly. Um, and if you're smart and you're able to spread it out a little bit more and not make it quite so intense at the end, then you can always practice a little bit and go back knowing that you're going to possibly go back to something, and that could help even more probably.
Yep, all the things. I will definitely say exactly what Tim was saying. The flex program, they both did the software engineering flex program, and usually the deadlines are for the 40-week schedule. However, you have 60 weeks to complete the program. So if you like get a little behind or a little off schedule, you have that built-in wiggle room is what I call it. Like, this is our bonus room, if you will. So if you are not able to commit to that 40-week schedule, you do have those additional 20 weeks built into your program. So yeah. Would you like to add anything about the retention while studying by yourself?
Yeah, I guess, kind of echoing what he said, going back to it, like refreshing yourself is very helpful. Um, for software engineering specifically, I found that phase two really built off of phase one. It's really kind of impossible to forget phase one when you're in phase two, but then the switch from 2 to 3 is where things are different because you're learning a new language and you're doing back end instead of front end. And then I found it helpful to like sporadically throughout phase three, redo a lab from phase two. And it doesn't take a whole lot to just kind of remember the syntax and the general concepts you were learning. I feel like even one practice problem, every few days or every week, depending on your pace, really helps keep it fresh. And so that's what worked best for me.
Yes, and yes, both of you, I'm in agreement, of course. Um, the way that the curriculum is built, you have quite a few optional or just like additional resources. So if you're ever like, I'm not retaining this, definitely review those materials, but also schedule that meeting with a tech coach or your instructor so that you do get that one-on-one help. And a shameless plug again, of course, is chatting in Discord. So if you search Discord or if you have questions, sometimes it's things that your peers may also be asking or struggling with. So you can find some answers there. But definitely, if you're concerned about retaining that info, get with the tech coach, your instructor, and check in with your peers on Discord too to see if they can support you as well. So, how did kind of a good bridge? How did you use the Flatiron community to build your confidence and help you succeed?
I think it's definitely different for flex students versus full-time students. For flex, you're not just immediately given a group of people that you're seeing live all the time. It's a little bit more up to you to make that community, make real life connections, talk to people on Discord. But what I found really helpful, maybe the most helpful thing, were review sessions, not only because I got to talk to my instructor face to face, but I got to meet other students who were at the exact same place as me in the program. And you're kind of forced to pair program with people then, which made me really nervous at the start. Like the idea of explaining my code out loud to someone and live coding in front of someone, making mistakes, that was pretty nerve-wracking. But getting a lot of practice with it through those review sessions and then, following up with students and doing our own pair programming, that was really helpful. Definitely relied on, a couple people in particular that I happened to be paired with and just stuck with them and kept talking to them, kept asking them for encouragement. And that's definitely what worked for me. I think without, having those personal connections and pair programming buddies, it would have been a lot harder. But your advisors too can support you emotionally, and your instructors are probably going to give you feedback when you're passing your assessments that you did a great job, and they might tell you what you did well. And so just remembering those things is really helpful throughout the phases.
For sure. I can't remember if I mentioned review sessions earlier, but thank you. They are a great opportunity to build that community and exactly what you're saying, get that practice in and find people that you can kind of network with and go through your phases with them. That is yes, yes, yes. Tim, and what about you?
Um, I would definitely agree about the review sessions because it is very true. As a Flex student, you are working on your own a lot, um, and you aren't there in person to make friends. So I was able to meet a couple of people in review sessions as well, and then And that was definitely very helpful because I'm less likely. I'm not as much the sort of person who's going to post. I'm not so active on social media, and I found it kind of, moves over to even Discord, and even though it's for a specific reason. But it was good to have a couple of friends to be able to talk to about code. And, like Louise is saying, also the good thing was I was able to answer some questions. And again, I feel like there's the saying of learning something properly, or I forget what it is now. In order to learn something, you got to teach it to somebody else. So
Yeah.
even when it was something that I felt like I kind of knew, and maybe I knew better than the other person, I understood it a lot better when I was trying to go over and explain it, and we've, learned it together. So it's helpful, on all levels for sure.
It is true. I love that quote. Like, if you to test how well you know something, can you teach it? And it like when you say, yes, I can, it makes me feel good when I'm like, oh yeah, I can teach that. Like I feel confident in that. It definitely can be a confidence boost for sure. So as we are wrapping up, we are down to our last few minutes. I just wanted to give both of you an opportunity for any advice or tips for current or perspective, all the students that we may get in the future and the ones that we have now. What advice would you give them?
I guess I have a few things for, both aspects of confidence, the technical aspect and feeling like you can do the job, and also the social aspect and networking. And that for me, that's like just as hard, if not harder than the technical aspect. So some things that really worked for me were, refreshing myself on some of the content I've learned before, even before boot camp started, just to remind myself that I liked it. Flatiron has prep work, which you kind of have to do anyway, but it's a good opportunity to really cement that initial knowledge and build some confidence going into your first phase. I would say that, also on the technical side, maybe proposing your projects in meetings with your instructors before you start them. I think this is required in the first phase, but as you go, it's still helpful to do that. And they can give you words of encouragement, say, this project sounds awesome, or you're forgetting this one major requirement. So make sure you get that in there. And so before you're going into your assessments, you feel very confident that you're doing the right thing, you've hit the requirements, and that your instructor already kind of has a preview into what you're doing. I talked a little bit about, the community aspect and really making sure that you find some people that you're comfortable talking to, but also just being open about your anxieties and struggles with other peers and instructors, because you're probably feeling like everyone else can solve this, or maybe no one has asked this in Discord yet, so everyone else did it perfectly. But if you actually start talking to people about your anxiety and what you're struggling with, most of them probably struggled with similar things. And if not, then they can help you get through it in a much more productive way than you just struggling on your own. Yeah, so really just take advantage of the people around you, take advantage of Flatiron's resources, the technical ones, as well as, meetups, fellowship events, that kind of thing. If you're introverted like me, practicing introducing yourself a million times to people will make it easier eventually, even though it probably took 5 to 10 times for me to be fully comfortable doing it.
Yeah, that's true. Practice, practice, practice. You'll get more comfortable as you do it. Great tips. And you, Tim?
I would say, roughly the same thing as well. I think coming from, my experience and what I would, given the chance to do it again, what I might change and do better. I think, I really appreciated the help, and all the times talking with you, Louise. But I think at the beginning, especially, or in the middle, there was a period of time where I wasn't as good about scheduling meetings and just keeping up on that, and I should have, because that's just a good framework for, I think, everything. And along with that, I was more hesitant to meet with my instructor for phase one and to contact the TCs. And I shouldn't have been quite as hesitant, especially not with the instructor, but also the TCs, because personally, I kind of liked it when I was able to figure something out on my own. But there is a point, where you spend too much time, it doesn't make sense, right? If you back up and run into the brick wall, do you keep doing that, or do you find a way around it? So I would be a little bit faster, and I was, because later on I started getting much faster and was making sure to meet with my instructor every week, which isn't necessary, but I think can be really helpful, especially if you're not understanding something, because that's what they're there for, is they're there to teach you. They want you to do well. You know, that's what they're there. There to make sure you understand and keep moving, you know, because they're there to help you in your goal of either learning a new skill or changing careers. Um, I feel like I talked about talking with some of the other students because that really helped. And one of the things that in the review sessions for sure, because each session, excuse me, each phase is a little bit different, but most of them you don't have to be at the end of the phase in order to go to review sessions. You can go to review sessions just to review. But I mean, that's going to be, each instructor is a little bit different, so you can always talk to them and see what they recommend. But they were very helpful for me. In some cases, they were very difficult because they kind of, and it wasn't anybody else's fault, but just because I didn't feel like I knew the material, I felt terrible afterwards and didn't want to do it. But I think maybe that's normal, because I know, from everything I see, that with programming, you're either on top of the world or at the bottom. There's no in between. I mean, there is, I think, but it seems like there isn't a lot of days. Um, and that I feel like those were really helpful. Um, and just yeah, I agree. If you're fortunate enough to know anybody, because I'm, the good thing about being middle-aged is that everybody's kind of in their careers. I mean, people want to help, and I'm fortunate enough then to have a few friends and a family member who are doing this for a living and have and want to help. So, I don't like asking for help, but when they're close, it can be a nice thing, and people want to help, because I know when the positions have been reversed, I want to help somebody else, and so that can be invaluable because these people, are experienced, they know what they're doing, and it can be kind of a nice time to get to know somebody that maybe you know well, or maybe you don't know as well, and something you have in common now that you might not have before. So
Yeah,
I think
it's true. It is very true to build those connections and see how you can help others and how others can help you. Thank you. Thank you both for all of the gems that you've shared. Feel free. Um, is it okay if they follow you guys on LinkedIn or connect with you on LinkedIn? I know that we were talking about using it more and building those connections. So feel
definitely.
free.
I'll send a link in the chat. Definitely.
And as we wrap up, just final boost of encouragement is that you are doing something new. Give yourself grace as you're learning it. Practice building your confidence. Know that it's a journey, not a destination, and definitely lean on your community as much as possible to help you along the way. And I'll put my contact information up here in case you have any questions. And Michelle dropped in the chat the link for future events. So please check it out and frequent them, attend, support, and have a good old time.